Ranjana, you can start.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to day one of ACM Alumni Talks 2022. I'm Ranjana from the batch of 2024, the host for today. Before we begin with the talks, we would like to let you know that we have Q&A sessions, so feel free to put up your queries in the live chat. Our first speaker for today is Shriyak. He has done his master's in statistics from the University of Illinois 2018 and BTech in CSC NITK batch of 2014. He is currently working as a senior data scientist at Meta in New York. He previously worked at Goldman Sachs and LinkedIn. He was also the convener of ACM NITK chapter for 2013-2014. Over to you now, sir.
Thank you. First of all, thanks everyone for organizing this and inviting me to speak. I'm really excited to talk to you all. I'm going to share my screen now so you all also have something to look at. It's just my background. And then what I'll do today is maybe talk about things I've done, where I've studied, where I've worked, but then I'll also talk about some things that have helped me do what I did. And then obviously I'll take questions from all of you. Feel free to ask me anything about CS, about where I've worked, but also just things that have helped me. As Ranjana mentioned in the introduction, I started at NITK. I got my BTech in CSC. I was in the batch of 2010 to 2014, graduated in 2014. And I think it might be useful to talk about what I was thinking about before I came to NITK. I studied in a CBSE school, I'm sure, like some of you. But then I didn't really know which branch I wanted to take. I knew that I liked computer science, I knew that I liked math. And so I was always thinking about if I should take computer science, if I should take ECE, if I should take IT, which college I should try and get into. But then there was also a large part of me that just wanted to study mathematics, like pure math. And so the big decision for me before I joined NITK was, should I take NITK CS? Should I take a different branch at NITK? Or should I just study pure math? And for those of you who've looked at ISIR, Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, I was considering studying math at ISIR Pune. I think NITK turned out to be the ultimate choice for me because I studied CS, or I studied computer science as a topic in 12th, and I really liked it. And then I realized that it's also more practical than pure math. But as you'll see later on, I never really gave up on math. You'll also see in my profile that I said that I've had a couple of software engineering and research internships because I didn't take a pure math undergrad. The first internship I did was in math. I interned at the Indian Statistical Institute, Chennai, ISI Chennai, where I tried to understand cryptography and lattice-based crypto systems. Seems complicated. It's just using math to understand how you can secure your data. Obviously, the theoretical side of it, and I really enjoyed it. I think that what I learned was the reason I chose computer science at NITK. One, sometimes applied math can be just that. It's very theoretical. You try to apply it to concepts, and it's a lot of fun, but you don't really get to implement a lot of systems that definitely exist within computer science. So that was my first internship. I studied cryptography, a broad term, at ISI Chennai, the Indian Statistical Institute. And that was after my second year. After my third year, I interned at Qualcomm in the summer through the placement cell at NITK. I was lucky enough to get an internship with Qualcomm. I interned at the Hyderabad office. I was a software engineer. I worked on, well, I worked on the chipset that Qualcomm builds. If you look at most Android phones or iPhones from 5, 6 years ago, you'll have the 400 series chipset. I wrote software testing modules for those chipsets. What I was trying to do was to ensure that during the start of any phone, if there are errors, your chipset can catch those errors and ensure it's sent back so that the next cache can be avoided. And it was a lot of fun. I actually got to work on a device that many people at that time used. It was very cutting edge chipset at that time. And it was also exciting to see that something that you actually build can be put into production, into a device. It was also the first time that I got to write code in a company. I think it's very different writing code for a project that you do in class versus writing code at a formal environment. I learned a lot about code reviews. I had a mentor who helped me a lot. I learned to write production C and C++ code, all of which was very confusing for me at that time. But then I learned how to be structured about writing good code as well. And that was a great internship. I think that prepared me well for what I did next. Once I came back to NITK from Qualcomm, I was in my final year, my fourth year at NITK. And again, through the placement cell, I was fortunate to be placed at Goldman Sachs in Bangalore. The role was called a quant. I think it stands for quantitative analyst. You can also call it a strat, a strategist. A couple of us were placed at Goldman Sachs from Bangalore, me and a fellow classmate from NITCS called Rajiv. And we both worked there for a couple of years. We really enjoyed it. When we worked at Goldman Sachs, both of us were working on a space that was slightly between computer science and data science. Back then, many roles in India. So, again, this was 2014. Back in 2014, roles in India didn't really exist for data scientists or for machine learning engineers or AI specialists. But that's in effect what our team did. We tried to use data to understand um, the part of Goldman Sachs that we worked on, operations, and we tried to use data, machine learning, data modeling to improve the process for operations at Goldman Sachs. I think what we really enjoyed, or at least what I really enjoyed about Goldman Sachs, was that it was fast paced. It it's Goldman Sachs is obviously a global company. It's based in New York, but we worked in Bangalore, and so we got to collaborate with a team that existed across the globe. We were expected to deliver results quickly. We learned a lot at a very fast pace. It was a young team, and also because it was a bridge across data science and computer science, I also got to apply a lot of math and a little less of machine learning at that point, something that I wasn't very good at, um, but something that I realized that I really like. And so after Goldman Sachs, I worked there for 2 years. So at the end of my tenure at Goldman Sachs, I realized that if I really wanted to grow, I needed to understand some of the math behind the machine learning. And so I decided to apply for graduate studies. I didn't apply to just math or just machine learning. I actually applied to masters in computer science, masters in computation finance, masters in statistics. Um, the ultimate aim was to study something between math and computer science. Again, back in those days, data science courses were not well established. And so what I ended up going for was something that would help me understand a lot of math and some computer science. What I ultimately chose was my master's in statistics at UIUC, What I learned later is they actually had something called an analytics concentration. And what the analytics concentration at UIUC, by the way, UIUC, for those of you who haven't heard of those four letters, is the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. It is a really good school for CS, engineering, and also agriculture, a subject that most of us from India don't go there to study, but it's super fascinating because um, there is a lot of agriculture technology in the US. And since Illinois is in the Midwest, in the middle of the country, where there's a lot of space and where there's a lot of agriculture, the university is really pioneering work in agriculture technology as well. But I went to study CS and mathematics, which they're also famous for. So at the University of Illinois, I studied masters in statistics. What I learned was they had an analytics concentration. What the analytics concentration let me do is take courses from the computer science department and have it count towards my master's degree from the statistics department. And I really enjoyed that. I worked on a research project. It wasn't a research thesis, I didn't have any publications, but it was a research project where I worked with a computer science professor on database retrieval policies. Again, fairly theoretical, involved quite a bit of math and computation. And because I was doing my master's in statistics, it also gave me a really good chance to keep my CS skills alive. Um, One thing that I'll say about studying statistics is it gives you a lot of appreciation for the underlying logic behind some of the algorithms that you'll take for granted in computer science. I think in computer science, especially even at NITK, you do have math courses that you're required to take. And sometimes we don't think of those as the main part of our course. That makes sense when you're going to work as a software engineer. But because I wanted to move towards the data space and machine learning, learning math was really helpful. Sometime during my first year at UIUC, it's a 2 year course. Sometime during my first year, I applied to an internship at LinkedIn. An NITK friend actually referred me for the role there. And without that referral, I probably wouldn't have got the role. And so, maybe my first small suggestion for all of you, find people who are willing to help you get to where you want. And so, I applied for an internship at LinkedIn, went through 3 or 4 rounds of interviews, and then got the offer to be an intern at LinkedIn. For those of you who have not heard about LinkedIn or are not familiar with the product, LinkedIn helps connect recruiters and people looking for jobs. It is, maybe they would term it as the social network for professionals. It's a way that you can represent your professional life online. Um, LinkedIn is also based in California and is a subsidiary of Microsoft. So technically, I worked at Microsoft. Um, and at LinkedIn, I worked on ads data science. I interned in the ads data science team, but that was just for the summer. I really had a great time at LinkedIn that summer. What I also got to do was a lot of my other friends from NITK from high school who were studying in the US. All of us had internships. A lot of us who had computer science internships ended up in the Bay Area. The Bay Area is a part of California, very close to San Francisco, where a lot of tech companies are based. And so we ended up having quite a large group of us who were interning at the same time at similar companies. And so it also helped me network and learn about other companies, other roles, software engineering, data science, and it was a really good experience. So that was after my first year at UIUC. And then my second year at UIUC, luckily, I got a return offer at LinkedIn. And so my second year at UIUC was all about taking the courses that I could learn the most in. I did a couple of research projects with the professor I mentioned. I took advanced statistic classes, some of which were purely for me to learn a new topic that had no practical applications at that point. Some courses were specifically in Python, so I could learn how to apply data science using Python. And then some courses were just required courses, like you have at NITK CS. And so my second year at UIUC was again a very useful experience, maybe slightly lower pressure because I had a return offer at LinkedIn. And so after UIUC, I went back to LinkedIn, where I work full time now as an ads data science, as an ads data scientist. So when you think about LinkedIn data science, ads on LinkedIn can be placed by recruiters, could be placed by external companies hoping to sell their products to other professionals. And so the ads team at LinkedIn, the work was completely focused on trying to find out the value of advertising on LinkedIn to external partners. As you can imagine, it's usually other companies advertising on LinkedIn, recruiting agencies, individual recruiters. You can also send like a paid in-mail to others. All of these are ways that LinkedIn makes money. And so I really enjoyed my time at LinkedIn, where I mainly focused on other companies and the value that it's adding to other companies. Something I realized that I was not doing was thinking about like individual users. And so after a couple of years at LinkedIn, I was looking for a role that was product focused, and specifically product focused with an emphasis on end users. And when a recruiter at Facebook reached out to me, I was extremely excited. It was Facebook back then, it's Meta now. And I specifically work at Instagram. So if you ask me which company I work at based on when you ask me, my answer might be slightly different. But I work currently at Instagram, which is a subsidiary of Meta, formerly called Facebook. And so when a recruiter from Facebook reached out to me, I was extremely excited. Like LinkedIn, you go through 3 or 4 rounds of interviews, including an on site. Their campus in California, Menlo Park specifically, was extremely exciting to see. And I decided to switch from from LinkedIn to Facebook at the end of 2019. What I also did was I switched from the Bay Area to New York, partially for personal reasons. That's where my wife and I now live, and partially because the Bay Area is saturated with folks who work in technology. And I thought that New York was an interesting city to explore, to be in when you're a young professional, and also learn a little bit more about the US. So I joined New York in so I joined Facebook in New York in late 2019, October of 2019. And I've been at Facebook for 2.5 years since then. When you join Facebook, you often join the company, they call it unallocated, which means you don't have a team. And so once you join the company, you have a couple of months where you go through boot camp training. They teach you about Facebook, they teach you about data tools available at Facebook. And again, I should say, I was a data scientist at LinkedIn, I'm a data scientist at Facebook. I am specifically a data scientist product at Facebook. And what that means is I worked on product data science. So I had to pick a team that had a user facing product. And Instagram was something that excited me a lot. I was not an active Instagram user at that point, but I had used the app many times. I had people around me who used the app, and it was very exciting to work on a product that had billions of users and actual users instead of companies. Because when I worked on ads data science at LinkedIn, I was thinking about the value that the product was adding to other companies. And now I would get a chance to explore the value that Instagram adds to individuals. And that was a lot of fun. I work on this team called Instagram Stories and Feed Relevance. Feed and Stories, for those of you who've used Instagram, are the two products that appear on your home screen. You can make a feed post, you can post a reel, which will then appear on your friend's feed. You can post stories, which disappear after 24 hours. Um, and all of it is a way for users to connect with others in their circle. Could either be friends and family, or could be interest accounts that you care about. Let's say I have a favorite football team, I want to follow them. That's important. My brother is going to post what he ate for dinner. That's important to me as well. And Instagram makes it easy for me, even though I'm thousands of kilometers away from my brother and my football team, to sort of follow along in what's happening. My role at Instagram mainly involves understanding why users use Instagram. Why does someone post a story? Why does someone come to Instagram to watch someone else's story? Why do users post content on their feed? Why don't users post content on their feed? And then what stops users from browsing on Instagram? Could be as simple as in New York, sometimes I take the subway or the metro to work. It's an underground system. Sometimes I might lose internet connection. How can we make Instagram work when there's no internet? Sometimes when well, especially when I was back at NITK, my phone was not the best. And so, how can you make a really high quality video play seamlessly on a phone that's not the latest model? How can we ensure that users on the latest iPhone model and users who are using a device that's 6 years old, exactly what I had back then, was has the same quality of media? And so these are really interesting problems. We work alongside the ranking team. I work on the data science team that owns all of relevance for Instagram feed and stories. We're starting to think a lot about Instagram Reels as well, which is obviously fairly popular in India. And so a lot of this role has been about using data to try and answer questions on who uses Instagram and why. What I'll say about Facebook, because I mentioned that Goldman Sachs was fast paced, and at LinkedIn, I learned a lot about like adding value. At Facebook, we're focused a lot about adding impact for users. And it's all about trying to ensure that more users on our products have a delightful experience that they can take away. If you come to, let's say, Instagram, because I work on Instagram, and see one post that added value to you, one meaningful interaction that you had with someone, one meme that you enjoyed that day, we'd consider that as success. We're just trying to find where we can add value in people's lives. People are busy, and when they choose to open an app, even though I guess other people might think it's a waste of time, we think they're trying to do something meaningful, and we're trying to discover what meaningful actions or activity they want to get out of Instagram, and we try and facilitate that. I think I've taken up almost half an hour. I want to stop now and maybe check if there are any questions on the live stream. I'll just stop sharing my screen. Happy to start sharing again if folks have questions about anything on the stream. But I'd love to take questions now.
Thank you so for your valuable insights, especially how you talked about your journey. You talked about how you learned, like how you wanted to do pure maths, and then you chose CSC, and then how you spoke about your journey. It was very insightful, and it gave us a good idea. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today and speaking about your experience.
Of course, thank you for the opportunity to come speak to all of you. Yeah, ACM, it was called CSI back then, was definitely a large part of my life at NITK. So thanks to everyone who made this possible for me to come to talk to all of you.